All right, hi everybody. Thanks for joining our first Eloqua user group meeting of 2022. Happy belated new year, and I hope everybody stays as healthy as possible this year. I feel like I talked to more people that are sick than not the last 2 weeks. So hopefully you can stay and your loved ones stay as healthy as possible. There's a lot going on right now, but let's dive into where we got a lot in our meeting today. We only have 2 presenters, myself and Kelly from our team, but lots to cover from each of us. So I just want to take a second to stop and honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the United States, we celebrated him with a public holiday on Monday. Not everybody got the day off, but for those who did, I hope you enjoyed it. But I found this, he has so many great quotes, so many great things that he did, but thought I would just share this quote. Life's more persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And actually, I have a book that's just a daily short little quote. You can't see it. It says everyday kindness, 365 ways to a peaceful life. Well, kindness is obviously something that some days it's easier than others, some hours it's easier than others. And I just think this is a great thing to come back to and remember to try to be kind as much as we possibly can. And remember that when somebody is not kind, usually they're dealing with something difficult in their life by their own perspective of what difficult is. It isn't always the dramatic things like death and things like that or depression. But all right, moving on. This is not therapy, I get that. So I'm your host for today. I've been the host the last 2 years doing this meeting. KP or Karen Kendall, I work for Sojourn. I've been here for 7 years now. I've been a marketer in a couple of different industries. I was for 4 years a marketing practitioner. It's where I learned this Eloqua thing. And then I switched over to consulting 13 years ago and have loved helping, at this point, over 100 different companies with their marketing automation platform of choice. Most of my expertise is Eloqua, but I've learned a little bit with Marketo, Pardot, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, HubSpot. I'm not like somebody you'd ever hire to help you with those. Our team, though, we have a team of experts on all of those platforms except for HubSpot. That's one that we have not chosen to service. More importantly, I love dogs and cats, and this is just some photos from hiking over the holidays. This was, I think, 2 weeks ago. We actually had snow in Tennessee, which this part of Tennessee near Nashville is not very common. So everything closed pretty much, but we still hit the road and went for a hike with our dogs. And there's my fiance, Amy. So here's what we're going to get into today. We've got Oprah with us. She's going to give everybody a cookie at the end of the call. So hang in there. Just kidding. That's in relation to our second topic there about website visitor tracking cookies. But anyways, I'll start with relevant reminders to keep you guys in the Eloqua know. Just a couple of things there. Hand it over to Kelly Newton, one of our consultants who focuses on Eloqua. She used to work at Oracle on the support team, focused on Eloqua there as well. So she's going to dive into the difference between first and third party cookies. She'll touch on a couple of other data types as well, just to set the stage, but she'll spend most of the time talking about why to use one over the other and tips for migrating to first party cookies with specifically Eloqua. So this is really meant for you guys as Eloqua users, not to pull it back too much. My topic for today after Kelly will be, how do you measure your ROI of Eloqua? There's a couple of different ways to do it. Closed loop reporting is one of them. It's like this much of what most people need. It's minimal of what most people need for metrics around ROI for marketing. So I'm going to give you guys an overview of the key options we see people look at and use and go forward with, and tips on each of them. Estimated cost to implement, ongoing estimated cost, time to implement, estimated time to maintain a solution. So I boiled it down to 3 of the key options, and I'll go through that. So, and then last but not least, we'll open it up. If you have questions throughout for Kelly or I or anybody, just, it doesn't even have to be related to today's topics. That's common. Usually somebody will enter a question in the chat or the QA. Please feel free to do so. If you have a tip you want to share, again, on our topics today or anything not related to those, that's fine. Then please feel free to enter your tip into the chat, or I can open it up in the open forum. I can make it so you can speak, of course, and you can share it right there. A few of you have sent to me over email your suggested topics for Eloqua user group meetings like this, so feel free to keep doing that. Next month, we're planning to talk about the contact washing machine app. I've had a few people reach out to me to want to dive into that. So we'll give some tips on how to use that app for Eloqua to keep your data as clean as possible. And little note there, we are recording this. We'll try not to swear, but if we do, please forgive us. And we will send you the recording later today. So if you have to buggy out early, no worries. So let's dive into the reminders. The biggest thing here, guys, is that if you didn't know, every quarter there is a new release Oracle puts out for Eloqua. The product management team is hosting a webinar right now about it. So you can watch that recording if you registered for it. You can still register and get the recording anyway. In that release, I'm actually going to pull it up just to give you a quick preview. So those are the dates. If you click that link, which I'll put in the chat when I'm done talking here, when Kelly's presenting, you can go to this page, and this is where it will show you where you can register and get the recording for that. They call it a release briefing. It's a meeting, a Zoom meeting, just like this, a webinar where they go through, the product managers present all of the details about the new release, and they'll touch on the release date. So there you would look by your pod. So if you don't know how to find your pod, it's when you log into Eloqua, it's in the URL. So Sojourn is on pod 3. And there you go. You can see 147 people registered for this user group meeting. And of those, 124 don't work for Sojourn or Oracle. Random bit there. But anyway, the big things coming in this release, they've done a nice job just bulleting out. So for those of us who want to do A/B testing on the campaign canvas, not just the simple campaign, you're going to be able to do that with the split decision step. Thank goodness, this is a long time coming. And then you can see the rest of the features. I'm not going to go into all of them on this call, but I would encourage you to, at the very least, read through what's coming into any new release. Obviously, pull out what makes sense to for your business. And if you can, watch the webinar they're recording right now. That's helpful because you could read through this and be like, yeah, we don't need any of that. But then watch the webinar and hear how they're explaining it. And you might think, okay, actually, we could do that one, the intelligent form spam prevention. I'm not even sure all of it is involved in that myself, but I'm going to watch that recording to learn more about it. Because, you know, there's lots of spam coming into forms for anybody's Eloqua instance. It can happen. So just to touch on a couple more reminders here, if you want to get free Eloqua training, or somebody on your team that's starting needs to get up to speed a little bit, at least on Eloqua, the Help Center has so many videos in it, screenshots. You know, if you guys have used it, then you know it's a great place to go to actually start to train yourself. Oracle University does have the Eloqua Explorer, minimal, like call it Eloqua, maybe 101 training. It's not even quite 101, but it's just something good to do and get an understanding of Eloqua. Some people will say, KP, I have a VP that we just bought Eloqua, or they just started at our company. We've had Eloqua. They want to know more about what Eloqua can do. Well, this is if they have time to spend. I think the Explorer might be like 2 hours worth of time, and they could bounce around if they wanted to. It may not even be that long. It's really a good way for somebody to understand what Eloqua can do. And then the Eloqua YouTube channel is just obviously an easy spot to see a lot of videos about Eloqua, how-tos, how to set certain things up. Most of those videos are linked to from the Help Center. And what's cool about when you go here is you can see videos about other Oracle Marketing Cloud products. If you have any desire to learn about them, this is the playlist for Eloqua. But when you look at the Oracle Marketing Help Center videos, it shows like Unity, which is their CDP, customer data platform. If you have any curiosity about it, you can start to take a look at that and some of the other Oracle products. But just a way to educate yourself without maybe having to talk to a rep quite yet, since we know we all do that and our customers and prospects do. The other thing I wanted to suggest was just stepping outside of Eloqua, thinking about other MarTech, sales tech, and strategies for marketing. ClickZ is a company that every day puts out a newsletter for marketers, and it talks mainly about marketing strategies. They interview large companies, small companies, on a lot of different topics, trends, hot topics. Anyway, I follow that. I try to glance at it at least once a day, and sometimes I pull information from that, and it helps me to figure out like what's a topic marketers in the Eloqua user group meeting need to hear about, like the Apple Mail privacy thing. I saw that from them, Litmus. There were so many organizations that were communicating about the Apple Mail privacy changes. Last but not least, if you ever miss one of our Eloqua user group meetings, all good, totally get it. You can watch past recordings on our website. We have a resource center that's using Uberflip to drive it. And we always post them usually the same day of the Eloqua user group meeting. By that afternoon, myself, or typically it's our head of marketing, Kristen Connell, will load our recording from like today's webinar. We'll hopefully have it there this afternoon, and I will email it to you as well. But you could always dig through there and take a look at past Eloqua user group meetings. So let me check the chat. Somebody did chat. Okay, I will comment back to you guys once I'm not talking. So with that, again, cookies are such an important topic, and we're not talking about the cookies I love to eat every night, chocolate chip cookies. We're talking about website visitor tracking cookies. When somebody comes to your website and a cookie gets dropped on their device, whether it's their phone, their laptop, if they do both, now they've got two cookies. So Kelly's going to walk us through first versus third-party cookies and give us some tips for you guys to migrate to first-party cookies, hopefully this year, as data privacy really starts to lock down, not just with Google Chrome, but many other browsers and mail clients. So Kelly has been one of our consultants here. Kelly, how long have you been at Sojourn?
We're coming up on 1.5 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
So but you're a longtime Eloqua expert. This isn't your first gig in the Eloqua world. She's a mom of 2 little beans in Canada and has a lot of snow there to shovel recently. So yeah. Kelly, it's all yours. I'm going to stop sharing so you can pop up your screen.
Great. Hi, everybody. Morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you for joining us today. Just going to share my screen here.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at the future of cookies with Eloqua. So like Karen was saying, we've got a lot of changes happening to cookie data, as we're all aware, and everybody's talking about how the cookies are crumbling, but it's not that scary. I think that it might actually be for the best. We've got some details on the different types of data. There's 4, so there might be a surprise there, one that you're not aware of. The difference between first and third party cookies. Then I'm going to kind of go over those changes and what some solutions might be, and discuss the future of cookies and our data there. So let's see. So the 4 types of data. So first party data, of course, and third party are the ones we're most familiar with. We do have a new one that we're going to talk about here. So the term was coined by Forrester Research, defining zero-party data as data that a customer intentionally and proactively shares with a brand, which can include preference center data, purchase intentions, personal context, and, and how the individual wants the brand to recognize them. So this is essentially the data that you're getting where they haven't filled out a form necessarily, right? So it mentioned purchase intentions. So that could be based on page visits, if they've filled out a shopping cart, right, in a different context. You probably get those emails all the time as a customer yourself, right? Hey, did you forget something? But these things can all help us to, as marketers, get a better profile of our customer and what they actually want from us, so that we can have a stronger relationship and send them information that they really want to see, rather than just spamming them with things that we hope they want to see. We can get a better, more accurate profile of our customer, because as you can see here in this chart, there's a lot of similarities between the first party data and zero party data. Third party being indirect, and one of the only ones collected without consent. Sometimes, of course, it's unknown, but that the second party data is at least also collected with consent. Third party has lower accuracy and can be shared all over the place, which is why, the cookies are crumbling. People don't want to share their information without knowing where it's going. So those are the 4 types. So now we're going to head into those differences about first and third. So the biggest difference, of course, being that tracking, being able to track across multiple domains. So what that means is For example, domain 1 and domain 2 are set up with Eloqua third-party tracking. When a visitor goes to domain 1 and gets a third-party cookie, that third-party cookie is also accessible via domain 2. But with first-party cookies, the domain 1 has a first-party cookie that's accessible just by pages hosted at domain 1. If a visitor then goes to domain 2, that would be a whole new tracking ID for that specific domain. In that event, an Eloqua third-party cookie is blocked. The first-party cookie data will still be collected. So this would be a big reason why, first-party cookie is a better option over a third, because it's still going to be retained. So it's, as we know, difficult to browse the internet without accepting a first-party cookie. You get a pop-up on just about every website you go asking you to opt in. And this is part of the, changes that we're going to discuss. And this helps to identify you as a returning user to the site and personalize your browsing experience. So the popularity of third-party cookies, like we mentioned there, is declining because they're blocked by anti-spyware applications and browsers and other default privacy settings that you probably have in place yourself. And the way that we collect and use the customer data is going to continue to evolve as customers become more and more informed about what information is collected and how it's used. Their rights to privacy are a big piece of this puzzle. The first party data is going to be critical to building these relationships like we talked about. When we get better data, we can build better models and more personalization. And then we get better engagement, which gives us more and better data. So we're developing that relationship, getting strong trust. And the customer is going to start seeing content from us that they know they want to see. So it's going to continue to get that, those click-throughs and that action on anything that you send through that email. So this is why ultimately we're encouraging all customers to enable first-party cookie tracking, as Apple, Mozilla, Firefox, or Apple, Mozilla, Google, have all announced end of life to third-party cookies. So it's on the horizon. But a little fun fact from the Oracle Eloqua side there, cookies remain in the browser until the visitor deletes them, or for 13 months. That's the max, just a little bit over a year. So if you think about how often you clear your own cache and cookies, probably not until there's a problem with a password or anything like that. You want to keep everything in there. So there are some benefits to how the cookies work. That's just a default. But more and more often, people are changing their browser settings to clear those on close.
And I'll just add, if you're not doing it, a lot of organizations are just buckling down on security for their employees. And this is one of the things, like, let's say you started a company, you get issued a new laptop. It'll be set up so that your browser, they'll probably have a designated browser like Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. It will be automatically set up with the settings to remove all cookies like every month, something like that. So you don't even necessarily have a choice. More organizations are buckling down like that to get rid of the cookies. So specifically third-party cookies, they actually will block them completely and not allow their employees to be tracked with third-party cookies.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's something that, might not even be a specific user preference. It's something that just is default. Yeah. It's the new default. The new default is not to have any.
Yeah, you got it.
So hence the changes. We got lots of changes ahead. So the Google Chrome one being a big one, blocking the referring URL. So in 2020, Google made web visitor privacy changes to how the Chrome browser handles tracking. So this would be how people visit when they visit your website. This change is coming from Chrome 85 and newer versions. It doesn't impact Eloqua specifically, but it does change what we are passing on to Eloqua. So only the referring URL domain is passed. So sojournsolutions.com is all we're going to get when they visit a page instead of the full, path, which is everything after that /. So the platforms and /Oracle-Eloqua, that's what's not going to come with it anymore. So any of that information that would typically be appended to a URL, even query string values, those aren't going to pass over. So that'll be important to note when it comes to segmentation, lead scoring, reporting. You're just going to be getting the domain. So yeah, and it's important to note that the Eloqua hosted landing page visitor tracking is also not impacted by these changes, because that just impacts your website visitor tracking. And Oracle's response on this, they didn't make any specific changes within Eloqua, but they do recommend updating the web server referrer policy and update the tracking script on all externally hosted pages. So that would be any of your URLs that are based out of your company's domain, rather than any of the landing pages that are in Eloqua. Those won't need to be updated because those will be tracked based on, the manage links checkbox. Additionally, for tracking, it's going to be really, really important to secure your tracking domain with an SSL certificate. If that domain's using the tracking scripts, when the first party cookies dropped, the browser is not going to display any warning messages regarding mixed content, and then we will successfully drop the first party cookie. So just heading forward, really any opportunity to secure those domains is going to be a priority, just so that it again adds to that trust and helping your customers feel confident that the information they're giving you is secure and safe. And we've got some sources here that you can click through if you want to read more details about the blog post we have on the Chrome 85 and tracking, as well as top liners discussion from internally on the Eloqua side.
And I'll just make a note there. So if anybody doesn't know, like I didn't know this when I was first an Eloqua user, tracking scripts, website visitor tracking scripts, they get put on your website, usually on all the pages to track people. It's JavaScript is what the script is. So usually a web person that knows JavaScript would do that task number 2. In the Sojourn blog post there, we have an example of the JavaScript that would be needed to make the change here, so that we pass the full URL, not just the domain, but the full URL. This happened in 2020, and a bunch of people were like, our Eloqua tracking scripts are broken. Oracle, what the heck? Well, it wasn't anything Oracle did. Google changed the way their Chrome browser tracks third-party cookies. And anyway, now you can only see the domain that somebody visited on your website, like companyaa.com, nothing after that. So anyway, if you want to actually pass this to your web person or see the JavaScript code, it's in our blog post there. And that first source is just Oracle's answer and recommendations, but those align with these 2 suggestions here, which is why we put Oracle's response.
Yeah, the Oracle Help Center also has a lot of those code samples that might come in handy for whoever your JavaScript person is internally. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way there. So then here's just an example with regards to the securing that domain. So if you've done any secure microsites, you're probably familiar with this area, but if you haven't, I just wanted to show it really quickly here so you can see that the process. You're going to navigate to assets, website setup, microsites, and then manage SSL certificates. So that little button at the bottom in that pop-up window. And then that's going to bring you to this page here, which gives you the opportunity to register a certificate. So once you fill in all of these details, Eloqua will generate that CSR within the window. So you'll click the button here and you'll use that CSR to purchase a certificate. And once you do that, you're going to open a service request with Eloqua, provide it back to them after you upload it here. And then assuming that there's a match, which you get a message within the instance right away if there wasn't, if there's an error in between. So assuming that everything's fine, you upload it, and then you let Eloqua know through the support portal, and then they will approve it, set it to active, and then assist you further with making sure that the tracking domain is in place for first party cookies. There's some scripts that need to be implemented once support enables everything. And the sample codes are here. And that's kind of where I was mentioning that there's some on the support pages within Oracle Cloud Support. Were there any questions before I move on to the future in that area?
So somebody did ask, Wasan did ask, is there a certain type of SSL certificate or any standard? And there is a specific type, right? I believe.
Yeah.
And I put a link in the chat.
EV, yeah, an EV or OV certificate type for the tracking domain. Yeah, and then Karen's provided the links there. I was just taking a look.
And guys, this is one of the more technical, hairy, confusing, like branding and deliverability. And this is actually a little bit related to that for email, but website visitor tracking and SSLs, like for me, it starts to go over my head. This is where like an IT person at your organization usually is needed. Sometimes it's like a website admin IT role. And Oracle support is where you would log the service request to start to work on this. If you want a middleman like a Sojourner consultant to pay to help, we can certainly help do that. But I would personally not do that. I would work directly with Oracle support on, like, let's say you want to do first party cookies and you're only doing third party right now. That's most people, so you're not alone. But I would log the SR with Oracle support to get moving on it.
Exactly. And regardless of having Sojourn involved or not, based on your comfort level, you will need to involve support in order to enable it for your instance.
Exactly.
So operations is going to have to be involved on the support side regardless. And that part's the easy part. You're essentially just saying, hey, I want this thing. Can you flip that switch for me? And then they're going to ensure that it works properly before you proceed. Of course, they'll test with you. But yeah, if you had a Sojourner, we could certainly help you through that process, but support's involved regardless. Okay. Oh, excuse me. All right. So looking ahead. So of course, we know this ourselves too, right? That, we're getting tired of being bombarded with irrelevant content and advertising. You spend probably a large chunk of your morning clearing your inbox of emails that you didn't want to get in the first place. And so many are choosing not to provide their data to companies because they don't understand how that information is going to be used and if it's going to be properly and securely managed. As such, a lot of privacy regulations have been put in place in recent years, GDPR being a big one, of course, in the EU, CCPA in California, and a lot of others in progress, CASL up here in Canada. And that all means that it's becoming increasingly important that companies who collect customer data are appropriately, doing so and being transparent on how that data is going to be used. The follow through and use of that data should be there to improve the customer experience. That would be the expectation. And I think we'd all agree that, that's a good thing. While it might make things a little bit more complicated for how we understand what our consumers are doing when they visit our pages, I think there's other things we can implement to track them in the same way, but improve that relationship at the same time. So the focus needs to be on data that a consumer explicitly provides. So that would be the first party data or zero party data, like we talked about. So communication preferences or other information that might help guide you on knowing what they want to receive from you. So interests would be a great example, such as, you have them attend something to do with craft beer. You find out later what the other products are that are relevant to that. Maybe it might tell you from, if there's like a magazine that they've clicked on, there's going to be some preferences there that you can know. So is it a parenting publication? And then they're going to want to know more about products that are relative to a certain age group, such as toddlers or any upcoming local events. If you know what region they're in, then there might be other data that you can assume from that. So planning for the future of cookies, top 4 things to do. Number 1, you need to understand your requirements for customer experiences across your entire organization. Make sure that you have a united front on what the goal is there. And then number 2, bring all that data together so that it can be validated, cleansed, and standardized, and then compile it to make it available to everybody who needs it. So essentially what that means is really focusing on your user security groups in Eloqua and making sure that the users within your instance have access to the appropriate levels. So that could be with contact level security, or you could just sort the data accordingly based on, salespeople and their regions and so on. Number 3 would be to develop new strategies and cultivate that first party or zero party data. So, once you have that vision clear and you know where you're getting that data from and it's all clean and everything's ready to go, then you can get those strategies in order. And then finally, test and measure the impact of your data. And this is going to be something that's all the time. You're going to be constantly testing it and measuring it to make sure that it's behaving the way that you need it to, and that you're getting the results. So prioritizing first and zero party is my recommendation. And that's going to create those more relevant and customized experiences. So your clients feel that attention from you, and that they know that they can look forward to the content that you send them, rather than it being another just check and delete. And that's my presentation. Any questions?
There probably will be. We'll have anybody that has them, please pop them into the Q&A or the chat. And I'm going to roll into my presentation for time's sake. Kelly, thank you. This is awesome. And I just put in the chat, guys, the link to the article where we pulled that chart from. And it's a good article that goes even deeper into those 4 different types of data. And like Kelly said, we're seeing people, zero party data is numero uno to get, right? Directly from people giving you their information. They've given you consent. They've told you their preferences. You're not guessing, right? You're not saying, well, we know that this person is in this role and in this industry, therefore we think they're going to want to buy this product of ours. Well, that's a lot of inferring and guessing. And if you're using third-party cookies and cooking, anyway, it's just something to consider. Like, I know for me personally, when I'm browsing the web, like I use on my iPhone Safari, and I'm looking up something that I might want to buy, like a new shirt. And now all of a sudden I go on to Amazon, and Amazon is referring shirts just like I just looked at, maybe even the same brand, to me with an ad there, or an ad on LinkedIn or somewhere else. Facebook more likely pops up about that brand and that shirt that I was looking at on Safari. That's third-party cookies. That's a big part of what drives that. And that's what's part of what's going to go away. Like, that means that that vendor, let's just say maybe it's Columbia or Nike, they've shared my information with others, usually data management platforms. Anyway, long story short, that's the stuff that's not going to be allowed by a lot of these browsers and technologies. Of course, there'll be some engineers that'll figure some hacks around it, but it will probably become illegal everywhere eventually, not just in like the EU and in Canada and California. They're locking down on email. They're locking down on getting more secure with data privacy on email, as we all know already from the last decade. But also, as we're seeing here with Kelly's presentation on website visitor tracking, the last few years have been, there have been a lot of changes, like that Google Chrome change 2 years ago.
And it's in line with a lot of cultural changes too right now, making sure that you have consent and respecting people's boundaries and privacy.
Yeah.
Just as a global culture, we're all trying to be more respectful.
Yep. It's a good point.
It's a good look.
Yeah, it makes our lives harder as marketers and IT people, but it's for the greater good. I know people fight that, and there's a devil's advocate to everything, but anyway.
Certainly.
So thank you, Kelly. I'm gonna zip through my part here. So I get asked by a lot of people, Eloqua users, marketers, no matter what platform they're using, and how do I measure the ROI of what we're executing out of Eloqua? You've been perhaps, sold, or somebody's talking about closed loop reporting, but ultimately it's like, where do you start? Where does that get you? Where does it not get you? So I put this together, actually a version of this presentation for a prospect of ours, in I think November, and then another prospect came about and was like, we might want to talk to you guys about this. So I showed it to them, and I've heard so many times over the years, like, we just can't figure out. It's something as straightforward as we send an email out trying to get people to become a patient or a customer, whatever, a member, a student, and we have no idea if that email did anything, if it made any impact. And that paid ad we did on LinkedIn, that Google ad, that direct mail piece, whatever channel it is, especially email with Eloqua, since a lot of you still, that's the #1 channel you're executing on through a platform like Eloqua. That's why I start with that email example. It's hard to understand and have the data tell you that email resulted in $1 million gazillion in one revenue and $2 million was lost. Like, how do you even get there? So when we're talking about what is marketing revenue measurement, there's a couple different terms people toss out. I want to do marketing ROI. marketing attribution, marketing influence, marketing performance management or measurement. We're talking about all of those when I'm discussing this topic today. And the whole idea here is you want to track the revenue impact of your marketing campaigns through the customer journey, through the funnel, if you have one. And your funnel might be really short. Like if you're B2C, typically it's very short. If you're in B2B, it's usually not a 1 or 2 day type of a journey. Either way, you still want to know if it's B2C and you send out an email and that fan bought tickets for the game tomorrow. That's awesome. Your email just did a great job, right? But how much did it actually do across everybody that you sent that email to try to get them to buy tickets for tomorrow's game? So anyways, then we want to see, like, of those campaigns we sent out, say last quarter, how many influence pipeline and revenue? Maybe we're not looking at all at what was won or money earned for our organization, but what's still in the pipeline that's open that our campaign has influenced. And there are usually a bunch of different, what we call marketing touch points that influence somebody deciding to buy those tickets to the game or to buy your product that costs $10 million every year for them to have. Wouldn't that be cool if we were selling something that expensive? But I know some of you are. And there's sales touch points. So a phone call, salespeople, obviously, email people, text people, connect with them on LinkedIn. We're going to focus on the marketing sales points for part of this conversation, and I'll touch on the full journey, all of the touch points, marketing's communications with somebody, sales communications with somebody, your customer service team, if you have one, their communications. If you have a customer success team, now you've got another department communicating with people throughout their journey with you, from unknown prospect to advocate customer, hopefully that full journey. So the whole idea of this is just boil it down. What of our marketing efforts are good, better, and best? And what should we change to try to use our best efforts more often? So I love this quote. One of my best friends, she passed away from cancer, but this was something she lived by. And she was a soccer coach. She she played at UNC with Mia Hamm, if anybody knows who Mia Hamm is. Very popular woman in the soccer world, but Ashley played with her there. And Ashley coached for many, many years, did camps, and she told her athletes this: good, better, best, never let it rest till your good is better and your better is best. So not perfection. Let's not strive for perfection. That will get you into a whole bunch of stress and doo-doo. But so what are touch points? Just want to talk a little bit more about that. There are digital touch points. There are physical touch points, like being at an event with somebody and having a dinner with them, or just talking to them in the hallway or at a booth. And some of these things you can manage, some you can't. So if you just look at this example of a journey, and I pulled this from Hubbard, they're, I believe, a consulting agency, not related to Eloqua, but anyway, they did a nice job of outlining how the journey is not a linear line. When I started marketing 17 years ago, it was more like a line. It was very old school back then. You didn't have as many digital touch points, even technically available. And people usually talk to sales. They read a little bit from marketing, but most of the journey was spent with talking to a salesperson or a sales engineer doing demos and things. But the thing about the touch points is all of the communications your organization has with a prospect all the way to a customer. But again, we're going to talk about the most common marketing touch points, and I've listed those out here. Everything from your website chat, your blog, organic search, paid search, online ads. Not always, are they on social channels, but sometimes you have channel partners where ads are put into their newsletters, or you put them into your newsletter. Anyways, lots of different touch points. This is the part that overwhelms people. How do we track this? Then how the heck do we make sense of it? So fear not, there are ways to do this, and there are good, better, best ways to do this. So most people are in level 1, they're good-ish. They're tracking individual touch points. So meaning you might be looking at what's driving the most views on our websites, like the source to our website. Who's clicking the most through our emails? What's our click-through on our emails? How are those specific assets performing? And then if we think about better, though, you're saying which campaigns are or not influencing revenue. You actually have the data to show you which campaigns are impacting revenue. That's great. That's why this is better. And you probably have either single or a basic multi-touch attribution model or algorithm you're using. And it's across most of your marketing channels. not sales, not customer service, not your CSM team. Really, you're just marketing focused. You're not looking at the other touch points from the other parts of your organization quite yet. Best, you are, right? You're looking at not just marketing, you know what marketing's touch points are, you're tracking them, you can see which touch points are working well and influencing revenue. But you're also including sales touch points, the phone calls they're making. Maybe they're sending fax messages. I don't know. Somebody just asked me about that the other day. Marketing usually is the team that's doing faxing. But anyway, so you're working across departments to look at all touch points in the full customer journey, the student journey, the patient journey, the member journey, the physician journey, whatever audiences that you're selling to ultimately and marketing to. If we look at the tactics needed for each one of these levels, so you just really need to, for good, operationalize your initial data collection. And you have hopefully UTM tracking involved so you can tell what drove somebody to that page on your website or that Eloqua landing page. And then for better, you're typically aligned with sales. You have processes in place for tracking the touch points and keeping the data clean. So for instance, your lead source values are consistent. You don't have these, it looks like it came from LinkedIn, but we can't really tell which ad. Like, it's clear, it's clean pick list, it's aligned with your CRM if you have one, or your membership system, your student database, whatever it is. Your campaign management processes, you have those documented, you know what they are, your team knows what they are, your agency, if you have one, they know what they are. They're not in your head. They're not just shared on a call and then you're expecting people to follow them. Internally and externally, you have lead management processes as well, or, you know, some people don't like the term lead. It's not used by everybody. Prospective patient, prospective student. So you have a process for managing those handoffs to, say, in the student world, an academic advisor that's going to go to the high school and now meet that prospective student in their high school and hopefully encourage them to go to their college. But we need to make sure marketing lets that student advisor know, hey, John just clicked on our LinkedIn ad or our Instagram ad. He's looking like he's interested in our criminal justice program. So probably don't want to talk to him about being a veterinarian, you know, like you should hopefully come to that conversation knowing what he's interested in. If marketing's capturing that data, we hand it off, not necessarily as a lead, but that intelligence to whoever the right salesperson might be or student advisors. I'm giving in that example. And then when you're doing this best, we know all the customer touch points, they're tracked in not just Eloqua, but you were able to pass to like the CRM in a clean format, the way that the salesperson best can digest it as best as we possibly can. It could be Eloqua Profiler. It could be a mix of that with sending some Eloqua data to different parts of your CRM or your student database. And we have sales touch points back in Eloqua, right? We need to have our intelligence on the marketing side of, okay, the salesperson just called them, and I can see from what they put in that task that this person is interested no longer in criminal justice, but now they want to be a lawyer. Okay, so now I need to switch up marketing to make sure our engine in Eloqua is communicating to that prospective student about our lawyer degree programs, not criminal justice. Let's see here. Do you have a single funnel or customer journey view that you've aligned on with sales? Potentially other teams as well, like I've mentioned, customer service, CSM team, and you make your budgeting decisions based on the data. It's not our guts anymore. There's a little bit of an element of gut put into anything, a little bit of human intelligence, emotional intelligence sometimes as well. Like a lot of people had to tap into, if they have it, their emotional intelligence over the last 2 years, because the data is a big part of what we drive our decisions off of. But sometimes we have to say, wait a minute, the pandemic just started, and in this country, people are not traveling. They're not even allowed to go to this country. So let's not send them an advertisement about a discount on plane tickets to, I don't know, some country where they're not even allowed to enter. So that's a bit about the emotional intelligence part of making that decision to say, well, we could just keep doing what we're doing, but we know that there's something compelling happening in the world or in our country or in our region, in our state, in our province, in our town. Well, maybe not that level of granularity, but that'd be cool if you could do that. And then there's considerations here. I'm going to keep moving though, because I have a couple more slides I want to get into that I think you guys will find probably more exciting. So here are the three options that we see most people tackle to actually do ROI reporting of their marketing efforts. Eloqua's closed loop, since you're an audience of Eloqua users or prospective Eloqua users maybe, Eloqua has what's called closed loop reporting, or you might hear the term CLR. There are 3 reports in Eloqua. There's one dashboard with those reports on it, and it can kind of slice and dice those 3 reports to kind of show a few more graphical items. I'm going to pull this up quickly in Eloqua right now for you so you can see what I'm talking about. You can go to the dashboard section and then scroll down, closed loop reporting. So this is a sliver of what people typically want, need, have to do marketing ROI reporting. And this comes with every version of Eloqua. Good news there, you don't have to pay more for it, nor do you have to pay more for the reports that come in Insight that relate to closed loop reporting. There's a whole folder in Insight, but you have to have data pushing into Eloqua, like opportunity data or student enrollment data, patient appointment data, things like that. Eloqua needs to know that something was sold or the person bought something. That purchase information, if you will, it needs to come back to Eloqua for these reports to work. So a lot of people are like, great, I'm going to do closed loop reporting from right after implementation with Eloqua, but these don't get set up. The reports are there. They look like they're set up, but they don't show any data. And actually, this will show data. Like if I go back, you'll start to see, make sure you do that. It always defaults and people are like, it's not even working after you got it set up. But anyway, the point here is there's a little bit of data. This is like 4 reports. Again, a sliver of what you typically need for analytics to do marketing ROI reporting. So what do? Well, Eloqua closed loop reporting is the cheapest option of these 3 options. It's a great place to start. The next option, and this is not in the order of good, better, best. I'll tell you what that would be, but it would not be this order. The marketing performance management platforms that are out there today. So these are technologies, usually under the umbrella of marketing technologies, but they often benefit salespeople as well. So sometimes it's considered MarTech, sales tech combined. But these platforms, you may have heard of some of them: Datorama, Caliber Mind, Visible, Full Circle Insights. There's about a dozen or 2 out there, and they usually, you can see the pricing, what they cost. So those are the best option. So I'm going to cut right to it. This is your best shot at having a solution that will last and give you from early on too, in the short term, the best analytics possible to know which of your marketing efforts are working really well, which are not, and where to make changes from there. The last option, third option, is building something custom in-house. We've helped companies do this. Before the MPM platforms existed, people built these in-house. They took something like a data warehouse, maybe Amazon Web Services data warehouse, got all the data from like Eloqua, from Google Ads, from CRM, their patient database if they have one, their student database if you have it, get it all in the data warehouse. Then that's one piece of it. Then the hard work was to make sense of it. Now you have CDPs that can do some of this work. But anyway, this is the most time-consuming, costly solution to do, oftentimes, as custom is. You have to have developers typically in-house build it, because usually it has a lot of sensitive, highly secure data. Or you pay a bucket load of money to somebody like us or other partners to build it or build part of it. But usually you have a data warehouse as a part of it, or a CDP, and a business intelligence tool on top of that to analyze the data in the data warehouse, like Domo, Tableau, Power BI, etc. So you have to pay for those, the data warehouse ongoing. You have to pay for the BI tool ongoing. So that's a big reason why it's the most expensive. The upfront cost to set it up and the time is more involved, and the ongoing cost. So you can see the breakdown there. I did cost, initial setup, implementation, if you will, cost ongoing, and then the time, resources on your end, the time spent for implementation versus maintaining the solution. So I just did rough estimates here to give you an idea of what we've seen with our customers with these 3 options. So good, Eloqua closed loop reporting, and I would hesitate to say even good. It's okay. It's a place to start. And then better, custom data warehouse, although most expensive, most time consuming. Best, basically the solutions people have built specifically for this need would be the MPM platforms. we see most people getting right now Visible and Datorama. Salesforce owns Datorama. Adobe owns Visible. You don't have to have Marketo to use Visible. You don't have to have Pardot or Salesforce Marketing Cloud to use Datorama. All of these MPM platforms work with various marketing automation platforms, including Eloqua. So I've included some links, and there's more information. You can just Google a lot of these MPM platforms, but they are awesome. They can give you great analytics. And the next thing here is just a breakdown of the pros and cons. I know we're running out of time, 8 minutes left. So I'm going to send you guys, I will make a PDF of this entire deck and Kelly's and put it together and have a link to it from the follow-up email that I'll send you guys later today. But just keep in mind, the net here is that there are more pros with the MPM platform than cons, as you can just glance at and see. But there are definitely pros to Eloqua's closed loop reporting. So you can see those. The key thing here is that we've got all these touch points, but then we have blind spots. What a blind spot is a touch point you have no way of tracking. You haven't figured it out yet, or it's not on the calendar year for a task to take on to track that touch point. So you typically with Eloqua's closed loop reporting have more blind spots, again, touch points that are not tracked by Eloqua or not easily tracked by Eloqua. If you're using a CRM like Salesforce, that technically is the fourth option here, but it's very similar to Eloqua's closed loop reporting with pros and cons. The biggest cons now with our best option are that you have another technology to manage, to adopt, to manage, to analyze the data. But it's worth it. I will tell you, the ROI out of an MPM platform is very quick to achieve, and then it helps you to prove you're also getting your ROI out of Eloqua, sometimes out of your CRM, out of your Google ads you're doing, etc. Your maybe Uberflip for content management, whatever other solutions that you're using. And I think that's the net. I don't want to talk about every bullet on all of these slides, but I will send these to you to really help you digest them. I'm also happy to just have a conversation with anybody one-on-one about these different options and pros and cons and estimated costs and things. So I want to double check and make sure if there are any questions. If anybody would like to chat, like talk, to share a tip or ask a question, please just put that in the chat and then I will unmute you. Everybody's muted by default for security reasons. And if you happen to toot, we won't hear it. Let's see here. I think Kelly answered some of their questions, so it looks like we're good. Looks like we answered all of them over the chat. If you do have any, we didn't have any, oh, we did have a Q&A. Do you have any advice on how to test our first party pixels once they are installed to confirm it's working? Kelly, do you have any input on that one?
Yeah, I had answered that
okay.
when Deborah asked a similar question. It's the same as testing third-party cookies.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, both have a GUID, and you can create a test example, like a test email in Gmail yourself, and then follow yourself to see where you're tracked. I find that's the best way to get the most authentic experience that your users are doing, is if you go through the process.
Perfect, thank you. And it looks like Sally gave a good point here. Give yourself time. If you're going to transfer over from third-party cookies to first-party, I would say give yourself like a month for the project. I don't know if Kelly, if you'd say anything different. It's not an overnight task with the SSL certificate and the back and forth with Oracle support and being respectful of people's time and not being overly high expectations of, oh, they're going to get back to me in like 2 minutes or in the hour, hopefully, but they have other customers as well. So, and your IT person might need to be involved to get the SSL certificate. So I think is a month even, you think that's sufficient or is it too much?
If you're talking about the whole thing end to end, for the transition to first party cookies and then securing your tracking domain, are you securing anything else in that process? Is your app and image domain secure yet and branded?
Yeah.
Often those are all done kind of as a parcel if they weren't done with your B&D when you initially set up or when you implemented your branding and deliverability on your instance. So, I mean, it can take a couple of months, depending on your internal processes and if your legal team has to approve things. But the 1 week that I was talking about is specifically pertains to opening a ticket with support and them enabling first party cookies.
Okay.
That's just they click the box on their side. Probably 2-3 days, depending on the time of the year, which is also why I noted, Monday at 9 a.m. is like primo maximum number of people online globally. So I recommend that if you want to make the most of that 1 week. You could have it done and all in place by Friday and be testing the following week. So yeah, 1 or 2 months for the entire process for sure, but 1 week just for support to do their piece of that puzzle.
Okay, that's helpful. And I'll tell you guys, some people are like, okay, what are you talking about? These whole like email branding and deliverability, the email images in Eloqua, the app links to be secure. So if you go into, I'll go into our image library. Let me just pull up any image here. Here's a old one. You can see this is an old image in our instance from 2017. It doesn't have the S. So this is before Sojourn actually set up our secure HTTPS images and links. And then the links are, well, where am I going here? Components. You can see some of the links. You can see these directly in your emails too, but I'm just trying to pull up one. You would see HTTPS going forward. Once you actually have it done with Oracle support, once you upload, like right now, if I were to create, just do a new image. You know what? Actually, we're running out of time.
If you quickly navigate to the website setup, you could show them there with the, and go microsites. And so like, see that little lock symbol? That means that one
secure
has been secured. It has a certificate.
Yep. So we moved to that last year. We were behind the boat, guys. So if you haven't done this yet, if you've had Eloqua for a few years, you might most likely were not set up with secure anything. Unless your IT team or somebody, your organization asked for it. So this is where any landing pages hosted in Eloqua and Sojourn now going forward are secure. They're HTTPS results.sojournsolutions.com/whatever we put in the vanity part of that custom URL. Before that, it was just HTTP. So non-secure. And that's where people will oftentimes, their computer doesn't even let them visit that page. They click the link in the email or from the ad, and they can't even visit the page. Most organizations don't allow their employees to do that, or even just computers you get from like Walmart or wherever have that security set up so that you can't go to a page that is not secure, that's HTTP, not HTTPS. So, well, we're out of time. We've got less than 1 minute left, so I want to wrap it up. Thank you so much for everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. Our next meeting, it's not going to be the third Thursday like it almost every month it is. I'm going to be on vacation. So we're going to do it Thursday, February 24th, but we're going to try to always do it the third Thursday of the month. I'll email you the invitation. We're working on the agenda. But if you have any topics you would like to see us cover this year, or at least in the next few months for these user group meetings, please let me know. I greatly appreciate everybody's time. Kelly, thank you so much for your efforts to get prepared and to deliver today. I really appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Well, thank you, and everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next month, hopefully.
Cheers.
Bye, folks. Cheers.